Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. This week I'm going to be talking about Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Just came back from seeing that today with my daughter. I liked it. I liked it a lot. I'm not going to go too much into like a plot summary type thing because I really want you to actually go out and see this without having too much spoiled for you. But I am going to discuss a couple of things that are gonna kind of sort of lean towards spoilery type things. So with that in mind, spoilers, big spoilers. If I could do text, I would totally right in here have spoilers, but I'm still new with this YouTube thing. So okay, so characters. We're getting a new Star Wars movie. And we've got some new characters. We've got some new people that we have not really ever met before. And that's kind of exciting. One of the most important characters in this, Galen, he's a scientist. He's a scientist who actually worked on the construction of the Death Star. His daughter, Jyn, she is really kind of the driving force behind this movie. This is more her story than anything else. Cassian, he is a rebel pilot. His droid, I want to say it's K2SO. Best thing I can say about him is if you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy, imagine you somehow combined Rocket with Groot and just made that into one character, where you've got a total smartass who can also just very strong, very powerful guy. That's the best way I could describe him. This is a little bit spoilery. This shocked me, and they did such an awesome job with it, and it was great. Peter Cushing portraying Grand Moff Tarkin is back. So Grand Moff Tarkin, if you're watching this, I'm assuming you like Star Wars, so you know who this person is. He was the guy in charge of the Death Star in the original 1977 Star Wars: A New Hope. Played by Peter Cushing, just absolute awesome actor, British. Anyway, that movie came out 39 years ago, and Peter Cushing actually died in 1994. So this was ton of just awesome special effects to get him back in this, but he's actually in it, and it looks, I think that it looked great. It looked very realistic. The biggest thing for me that pulled me out of this was the fact that, I know that this guy's been dead since 1994, over 20 years. And he was old during the first movie, during Star Wars: A New Hope. So, old then, add 20 plus years onto that. So, that was the biggest thing for me. But no, he's in it, and he's an active character. It's not just, archive footage of him just, standing there furrowing and just, grumpy. It's not that. He's central to the storyline, and they involve him in it. They treat him like a real character, and he hits his marks, he delivers his lines, he does everything. It's very cool. There are a couple other neat little cameos like that, and I guess that these were actually from some unused reels from A New Hope. Some of the rebel pilots, they actually do have some new footage of some of those guys towards the end of the movie, which, again, it was a neat way to tie this into A New Hope. It was very cool. The other big CGI one that they did, they actually digitally de-aged Carrie Fisher, and she looks like the 19-year-old Princess Leia from A New Hope. She's in it very briefly, but it's awesome. It's very cool. So yeah, some of the other characters. Krennic, he is kind of he's the antagonist of this one. He is the one he wants the Death Star built because he wants the power. He wants this to just be the big crushing force for the I almost said the First Order, but no, that's totally Episode 7. For the Galactic Empire. He totally wants the Death Star to just be this big dominant power. Bail Organa is in it, played by Jimmy Smits, so that was really cool to see. That was a nice little way to just kind of still connect this to the prequels a little bit and actually get everything in there. And Darth Vader. I'm sure if you've seen the previews, you've seen the trailers, you know Darth Vader's back in it. It was pretty neat. It was pretty neat to see Darth Vader again on the big screen. Some of the major things that... And again, this is going to be a little bit spoilery. Some of the big things that I really took away from this that I liked was the fact that they actually finally said, why that trench existed on the Death Star and why that exhaust port was there. This was designed specifically by Galen, by the designer of this, as a final little, to the Empire, because they really... He worked for him, he got out, he was happy being out, and then he gets pulled back into it very, very violently, gets pulled back into it. So it was neat to see that, that's why this was there. You can go a couple of ways with this, because on one hand, it's like, this is a space station the size of a moon. It should have exhaust somewhere. We've got a Chevy Cruze. The thing has an exhaust pipe on it, and it's much smaller than the size of a small moon. So I can totally see why there would be an exhaust port on it. It's neat to see why that exhaust port leads directly to the thing that could blow the entire thing up. This was done very directly and very deliberately by somebody who wanted to just make all the appearances of, yes, I'm helping the Empire, I'm doing what I'm supposed to. But it was also pretty cool to see that this was just sabotage. The Church of the Force, that was kind of briefly touched on by Max von Sydow's character in The Force Awakens in Episode 7. They don't really actually mention it specifically, but you do have one character specifically who he's basically a blind monk who is just dedicated to the Force, and doesn't appear to be a Jedi or anything like that. So yeah, that was a neat little touch to some of the other films. One thing that, after watching it, it's like, that makes sense, but I never really thought about it at the time. They demonstrate the power of the Death Star by just targeting certain cities and certain small areas on a planet. And at the time I was like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. I didn't know that this thing had multiple settings for its destructo beam. But no, it totally does, because even the Death Star 2 in Return of the Jedi, they were just targeting ships with it, and it wasn't of course it can do things like that. That makes a lot of sense. So there were a couple of criticisms that I've read about this, and one of the big criticisms that I saw, really, I'm totally a nerd, and I'm proud of my nerdiness. I'm super proud of that. People were complaining about this movie that it didn't mention any of the Bothans. If you know what I'm talking about, in Return of the Jedi, Mon Mothma ends up saying many Bothans died to bring us this information, the battle plans of the second Death Star. That's not what this movie is about. This movie is about the first Death Star, not the second one. So if your biggest complaint about this movie is that they didn't have any Bothan spies in it, you're thinking about the wrong thing. So I know it's nitpicky, but come on, if you're actually going to make a review and that's one of your criticisms, I pick stuff like this apart because it annoys me. I could go off on a huge tangent about all the little nerdy things that annoy me on a regular basis, but I'll save that for later. So some of the things that I really liked about this, this really reestablished Darth Vader as a supreme dominant badass. The prequels, I didn't really like the prequels, but one thing I will say about them, at least they tried something different. They went in a different direction. George Lucas really did try something with that. Unfortunately, to me, he tried to actually humanize Darth Vader a little bit with Anakin Skywalker. I didn't think that worked out so well. I liked the Darth Vader from A New Hope, where people seemed not necessarily afraid of him, but at least, they tensed up when he would walk into a room. And then in The Empire Strikes Back, he's just an unapologetic badass, just completely. The leash is off and he's just a mad rabid dog now. And, he's ultimately redeemed in Return of the Jedi. But in episodes 1, 2, and 3, he's a 9-year-old kid who, you can very easily make the argument that everything that's happening in that movie, everything that's happening in the first chapter of Anakin Skywalker's life in this universe, is totally beyond his scope of comprehension and way beyond anything that he could actually control. So, I didn't really like that part of episode 1. Episode 2, he was totally a whiny little... I was not super pumped about that. Episode 3, my biggest critique about that, wow, this is really turning into just a huge Star Wars thing. Yeah. Episode 3, my biggest critique about episode 3 is the fact that, George Lucas kept saying, he wanted to make these as a family film, as like a good throwback to the action serials that he grew up with as a child, and these were supposed to be family friendly and all that stuff. So in episode 1, you had the dude stepping in the poopy with Jar Jar Binks, and then by episode 3, we're murdering children. That seems like a stretch. But anyway, Darth Vader. Back to being a badass. I'm happy with that. The CGI work, again, to bring Tarkin and bring 19-year-old Leia back, it blew me away. It was awesome. It was absolutely awesome to get to see that. One thing that I really liked about this, they actually showed that, some of these good guys, they would kind of be considered the terrorists to a certain extent. I mean, you've got the Galactic Empire, and they are the governing force. So you've got this guerrilla movement trying to bring down the Empire. And you see that Cassian, I can't actually remember how it's pronounced right now. That's bad. Anyway, the very first scene that we really meet him in, he's talking with one of his contacts, and as soon as he gets a chance, he shoots the contact in the back and then just escapes that way. That's a weird way to try to introduce somebody who is a part of the Rebel Alliance, who is just always, the rebels have always just been portrayed as, the good guys and the heroes, and it was an interesting and a refreshing way to just try to introduce. This is one of the guys on the good guys team. It was cool. I liked the way they did that. One of the things that I really liked about this was this movie ends realistically an hour or so before A New Hope begins, and I cannot wait to, when this comes out, I'm going to turn the phone off, lock the doors, turn the lights down low, make some popcorn, grab some Pepsi, because I love Pepsi, not so much a Coke fan, just Pepsi, and do a huge marathon with episodes 1, 2, and 3, Rogue One, then into 4, 5, 6, 7. I cannot wait to actually do that as a huge marathon for this. It should be pretty cool. I like the fact that this didn't have the standard, Star Wars, then crawl for everything. I like the fact that it seems like they are just going to reserve that exclusively for the saga films. It makes sense. I like it. One of the other things I like, this was a much darker film. This was a departure from the series. This was they tried something new, and in my opinion, this really worked. It was very successful. A couple of things that I didn't like about this film, because this was not without its flaws. There have been very few movies, in my opinion, that are just perfect movies that I could just watch repeatedly over and over and over again. And I will actually do a list of things like that at some point. So some of the flaws in this one, Darth Vader makes a joke, and it's a bad joke, and it's just a stupid pun, and it's just not good at all. This should not have happened. I don't know who decided that this would be a good idea to, you know what we should do? We should totally just remind people that Darth Vader has children, so we'll throw a dad joke in. That's what it felt like, and it was just like I couldn't roll my eyes back enough, even as he was saying it. It was just, oh. So, not a huge fan of that. Another thing that I really thought was kind of unnecessary, it ties it into the rest of the universe, but why the hell were those two guys from the Mos Eisley Cantina in there? The guys that, they pick a fight with Luke and Obi-Wan cuts the one dude's arm off. They appear randomly at some point just to be jerks. And like, cool. Totally didn't need to be in this movie. Another thing that, in my opinion, totally did not need to be in this movie, C-3PO and R2-D2. They have a small little scene where C-3PO just gets to complain because that's what C-3PO does, and it felt weird because it didn't tie the scene before it to the scene after it. You could have cut that out completely and the movie would not have suffered at all. It would have been maybe 30 seconds shorter, and that would have been about it. I probably would have been okay with cutting that out and cutting the scene with the two guys from the Mos Eisley Cantina out, mostly because that kind of happens towards the middle of the film, and honestly, that's my biggest gripe about it. The middle of the film, it really did kind of seem like it dragged on a little bit. I mean, they were still doing things that were advancing the plot and keeping it going forward, but it didn't feel like it was zipping along as much as I would have liked it to. I don't know. In general, though, I liked it. I thought this was a great movie. It's worth seeing. Definitely worth seeing in the theaters. I didn't make it to a 3D showing or to an IMAX showing because first, there's no IMAX theater close to me, and the only time that was playing that was convenient for me was just like a regular version, not a 3D version. 3D hit or miss for me. Sometimes it seems cool, and other times it seems like, God, this is a gimmick. I don't know. There was no real scene in this that I could remember thinking, like, oh my God, this would be so much better with 3D. And for some movies, legitimate, like Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar, that, if you didn't get a chance to experience that in IMAX 3D when that came out, you missed out. That was... the movie, honestly, I was not a huge fan of the movie. It was Pocahontas in space, but the look to it, it was incredible. So, is this movie worth seeing? Yes, definitely worth seeing. Highly recommend it. Go out and see it. Take your pick. 3D, IMAX 3D. Honestly, if there was an IMAX theater closer to us, I totally would have gone for that because the sound quality in IMAX is the best sound quality that you can possibly get. Yeah, I know the picture size, bigger picture, all that, blah, blah, blah. The sound for the IMAX, it's totally worth it. But yes, go out and see this movie if you have not already. Thank you very much for watching this. Please like, subscribe, and all that other fun stuff. Gonna do some more things movie related in the next coming weeks, and also need to talk about some sports stuff because, well, I like sports too. And wearing my Tigers hat right now. Also have a Wings hat. Buying a Lions hat and a Pistons hat soon because I like Detroit sports. So going to be talking about sports and all that and other fun stuff as well. But again, thank you very much for watching. Have a great day, and again, like and subscribe, please. Thanks.